Welcome back to the Final Expedition Log, where we document the missions that never made it home. Today's account comes from the Siberian taiga in February 2018. A routine ecological survey that ended with 3 researchers walking into a zone where sound itself ceased to exist. The footage they transmitted shows compasses spinning without reason, and their final radio check contained only silence, the kind that shouldn't be possible with an open channel. If these real expedition records keep you coming back, consider subscribing. It helps us continue recovering and sharing these lost mission files. Now, let's examine what Dr. Natalia Orlova's team found in that soundless clearing. The mission brief was straightforward. Investigate irregular forest clearings detected on satellite imagery in the Krasnoyarsk region, approximately 180 kilometers northeast of Yeniseisk. Dr. Natalia Orlova, our lead forest ecologist from Moscow State University, had flagged the formations 3 months earlier during routine analysis of Landsat 8 data. The clearings formed concentric patterns inconsistent with logging operations, wildfire damage, or natural tree fall. Our deployment team consisted of 3 personnel: Orlova herself, Mikhail Petrenko handling field navigation and geological assessment, and myself, Andrew Cole, documentation specialist responsible for photographic and video evidence. We established base camp at coordinates 59.7844 degrees north, 92.1503 degrees east on February 4th, 2018, with temperatures holding steady at -23 degrees Celsius. Standard expedition protocol: satellite phone check-ins every 6 hours with our support coordinator in Krasnoyarsk. Handheld GPS units synchronized to base camp coordinates. Emergency beacon activation procedures reviewed at morning briefing. Petrenko had 22 years' experience in Siberian wilderness navigation, including 3 winters above the Arctic Circle. Orlova's credentials included fieldwork in Kamchatka and the Altai Mountains. I documented 17 previous expeditions across 4 continents. We weren't novices. Our equipment manifest included cold weather survival gear rated to -40 degrees Celsius, 4 days of rations, medical supplies, climbing rope, sampling equipment for soil and bark analysis, and my full HD recording setup with backup batteries. The helicopter insertion went smoothly. The pilot reported normal conditions, no weather systems approaching, clear skies forecast for 72 hours. Day 1 involved establishing our grid pattern and taking baseline measurements of the surrounding forest. Dense Siberian larch and Scots pine. Average tree height 30 meters, typical understory vegetation for this latitude and season. Snow depth measured between 40 to 60 centimeters. Consistent with regional accumulation. Orlova collected bark samples from perimeter trees, noting normal growth rings and no signs of disease or pest infestation. The anomalous clearings were still 4.8 kilometers northeast of our position. We maintained standard hiking pace, documenting everything. My camera recorded normal forest sounds: wind through branches, snow crunching beneath our boots, occasional bird calls from Siberian jays and nutcrackers. Petrenko's GPS showed our position tracking correctly against topographic maps. First day radio check at 1800 confirmed our status with base support. February 5th began with routine morning protocol. Weather remained stable, visibility excellent. We covered the remaining distance to the first clearing by 11:30, and that's when the baseline data started showing inconsistencies. The clearing measured approximately 40 meters in diameter, perfectly circular, too perfect for natural formation. But more immediately noticeable, the absolute absence of snow accumulation within the boundary. Outside the clearing, 55 centimeters of snow. Inside, bare ground, partially frozen soil, scattered dead vegetation, no gradual transition. Orlova suggested localized thermal activity, possibly volcanic in origin, though Petrenko's geological survey equipment registered no temperature differential between clearing and forest. Ground temperature, -8 degrees Celsius, both inside and outside the formation. No thermal explanation held. That's when I noticed my audio levels. I was recording continuously, standard procedure for documentation. And when I played back the approach to the clearing, the waveform showed normal ambient sound until we crossed the boundary. Then, nothing. Not reduced volume. Complete absence. I stopped recording and called out to Orlova. She was 12 meters ahead, crouched over a soil sample. She turned, her mouth moving, but no sound reached me. I saw her expression shift from concentration to confusion, to something approaching alarm. Petrenko was waving from the clearing's opposite edge, and I could see he was shouting. But the silence was total, not even the sound of my own breathing. I stepped backward across the clearing boundary, and sound returned like a physical pressure. Wind, my own gasping breath, the creak of my equipment harness. Orlova and Petrenko were both retreating to the perimeter, their faces showing the same disorientation I felt. We regrouped outside the formation, and Petrenko immediately checked his compass. The needle was rotating slowly, completing one full revolution every 8 seconds. Not spinning wildly, rotating with mechanical precision, as though following some invisible circular magnetic field. His backup compass showed identical behavior. My watch displayed 13:47, correct against my phone's timestamp, but Orlova's watch had stopped at 11:32, approximately when we'd first entered the clearing. She tapped the crystal. The second hand remained frozen. We maintained professional protocol despite the anomalies. Orlova proposed we document the phenomenon systematically before reporting to base support. I set up my camera on the tripod at the clearing's edge and recorded Petrenko walking into the silent zone. The footage shows him moving normally, his boots disturbing the ground, his breath visible in the cold air. But the audio channel records nothing when he crosses the boundary. He claps his hands, shouts, strikes 2 rocks together, all visible actions producing 0 acoustic signature. The microphone's input levels don't drop. They simply register no sound, as though the air itself has lost the capacity to transmit vibration. When he returns to the perimeter, the transition is instantaneous. Mid-step, sound returns. Petrenko's geological assessment couldn't account for it. No unusual mineral deposits in the soil samples, no electromagnetic interference on his handheld meters, no radiation above background levels. The ground composition was standard for the region. Permafrost layer at 80 centimeters depth, mixed clay and organic material, pH levels normal. Orlova's ecological analysis was equally inconclusive. The vegetation inside the clearing had died recently, within the past 2 months, based on cellular breakdown, but showed no signs of disease, chemical contamination, or physical damage. The plants had simply stopped living. No insect activity, no fungal growth, no decomposition bacteria. The dead vegetation was preserved in the -8 degrees Celsius temperature, but it wasn't decaying. It was just stopped. Our 1400 radio check was due. I activated the satellite phone and got a clear connection to Krasnoyarsk support. I described the acoustic phenomenon, the compass behavior, the vegetation die-off. The response coordinator, Dmitry Volkov, who'd been our support contact for 3 days, asked me to repeat the description. I did. He asked if we'd experienced any equipment malfunctions prior to reaching the clearing. I confirmed all equipment had functioned normally. He requested we document thoroughly, but avoid extended exposure to the formation until they could consult with specialists. Estimated callback within 2 hours. Standard caution protocol. Nothing in his voice suggested alarm, just procedural care. We agreed to establish observation position at the perimeter and wait for guidance. But Orlova had moved to the second clearing. We'd identified 3 formations on the satellite imagery, arranged in a triangular pattern roughly 200 meters apart. She was already halfway to the northern clearing when Petrenko noticed her absence. We caught up at 14:35. This clearing measured 60 meters in diameter, significantly larger than the first. Same characteristics. Perfect circle, no snow, dead vegetation, bare frozen ground. Orlova was standing at its center, completely still. I called to her from the boundary. She didn't turn. Petrenko entered the silent zone and reached her position, placing his hand on her shoulder. She turned slowly, and through my camera's zoom lens, I could see her expression. Not fear, not confusion, but something like recognition. They both stood there, inside the silence, for approximately 90 seconds. Then Orlova pointed northeast, toward where the third clearing should be located, and they began walking deeper into the formation, away from the perimeter where I stood recording. I followed them into the silence. The transition was disorienting even the second time, like passing through a membrane into dead space. Orlova and Petrenko were 40 meters ahead, walking with purpose toward the forest line on the clearing's far side. I ran to catch up, my boots silent against the frozen ground, my breathing inaudible even to myself. When I reached them, Orlova turned and her lips formed words I couldn't hear. She pointed to her GPS unit. The coordinates displayed were impossible. 59.7521 degrees north, 92.1288 degrees east, placing us 3.2 kilometers southwest of our actual position, back beyond base camp. Petrenko's unit showed different numbers entirely. 59.8103 degrees north, 92.1647 degrees east, northeast of the clearing. My own GPS had stopped updating, frozen at our entry coordinates. We entered the third clearing at approximately 1520. This formation was the largest, estimated 120 meters in diameter. At its center stood a single larch tree, still living, its needles green against the gray sky. Everything else was dead ground. Orlova approached the tree and placed her hand against its bark. I was recording continuously, though I knew the footage would capture no ambient sound. What it did capture was the moment all 3 of our compasses stopped rotating and aligned to point directly at the tree. Not north, the tree itself. Petrenko pulled a magnetic field detector from his pack and swept the area. The readings showed normal Earth magnetic field strength, but the directional component was wrong. According to his equipment, magnetic north was 30 meters away, at the tree's location. That's when the wind stopped. I don't mean the sound of wind. We were already in the acoustic void. I mean the physical movement of air ceased completely. The branches of the surrounding forest, visible beyond the clearing's edge, went absolutely still. My breath vapor, which had been drifting away from my face, hung motionless in the air. Snow that Petrenko had kicked up while walking remained suspended at knee height, individual crystals frozen mid-fall. Orlova was writing in her field notebook, her hand moving normally. But when I looked at what she'd written, the text made no sense. Repeated coordinates that corresponded to no location on our maps, alternating with the phrase displacement gradient, written 17 times. Her handwriting deteriorated with each repetition until the final entry was nearly illegible. I checked my camera's timestamp, 15:47, but my phone showed 13:22, 2 hours earlier. Petrenko's watch had started running backward, the second hand moving counterclockwise. My last radio check had been at 1400, meaning we were overdue for contact. I retreated to the clearing's edge, intending to exit the silent zone and call Krasnoyarsk support. But when I reached what should have been the boundary, there was no transition. The silence extended into the forest. I walked 50 meters into the trees. No sound returned. 100 meters, still nothing. I could see the forest, the snow, the gray afternoon light, but I existed in absolute acoustic isolation. When I returned to the clearing, Orlova and Petrenko were gone. The living tree remained. My camera, still recording, showed their last positions clearly, but they simply weren't there anymore. I found the satellite phone in Petrenko's abandoned pack. I activated it, not expecting signal, but the connection established immediately. The voice on the other end wasn't Dmitry Volkov. It was Natalia Orlova. She said, "Andrew, this is base support. We show your position as 4.8 kilometers northeast of camp. You've been out of contact for 6 hours. Mikhail and I are returning to extract you. Stay at your current coordinates." I tried to respond, to tell her she was with me, that she'd disappeared, but no sound came from my throat. The silence had followed me out of the clearing. I looked at my camera's LCD screen, reviewing the footage. The timestamp showed February 6th, 13:30, yesterday, before we'd even approached the first clearing. The recording displayed our arrival at the formation, but in the footage, there were only 2 team members visible, Orlova and Petrenko. I wasn't there. I checked my hands, my equipment, my reflection in the phone's dark screen. I was present, but the camera had never recorded me at all.